She slammed the paper on my porch and shouted, "You don't live here anymore." I still remember that morning like a bad dream. My boots had barely touched American soil after 8 months overseas. And the first thing I saw wasn't a welcome home sign. It was an eviction notice from my own neighborhood's. The woman behind it, a blonde in a floral blazer and fake smile, called herself the acting president. Everyone else just called her Karen. She folded her arms like a judge in her own courtroom. "You abandoned your property, so we reclaimed it for community development," she said, with that smug grin that made my blood boil. I told her calmly, "Ma'am, I was deployed. That land is under my name." She smirked and said, "Not anymore." That was the moment. I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a setup. The neighbors peeked through curtains as she waved the papers, shouting about HOA regulations. She wanted a scene, and she got one. My daughter clutched my sleeve, whispering, "Dad, are we losing our home?" I swallowed hard. "Not yet, sweetheart." Karen strutted off like she owned the place. Minutes later, 2 trucks pulled into my driveway, contractors hired by the HOA to clear the property. They started tearing down the fence I built with my own hands before I left for service. I tried to stop them, but Karen screamed, "Step back or I'll call the cops for trespassing." That word, trespassing, hit me harder than a bullet. I stood on the same ground I bought, the same dirt I swore I'd come back to. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper. I pulled my phone out and said quietly, "Go ahead, call them. I'll be waiting." She smirked again and dialed. I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning. Because what she didn't know was that the land she claimed to repossess was legally protected under a federal housing program for active duty service members, and she was about to find out who she was really messing with. She took my home while I was serving my country, so I decided to take back the whole neighborhood. By the time the police arrived, Karen had already twisted the story. She stood near my driveway, waving her hands like a director of her own drama. "Officer, he's threatening me. He broke into this property. We've already repossessed it." The officer glanced between us, confused, as I stood there in my dusty uniform, duffel bag still over my shoulder. "Sir, do you have proof of ownership?" the officer asked. I handed him my folder, the original deed, mortgage documents, and the military exemption papers I kept in a plastic sleeve since deployment. Karen snatched one from his hand, pretending to read it. "Oh, please. These are outdated. The HOA voted on this property months ago," she sneered. I looked at her, calm but sharp. "You mean you and your friends voted to steal a soldier's land?" Her fake smile cracked for a second. The officer cleared his throat and said, "Ma'am, this doesn't look like a valid HOA repossession." But she cut him off. "You have no idea how this community works, officer. We have authority." I could see the hesitation in the cop's eyes. HOA conflicts are messy, and Karen knew how to weaponize confusion. She leaned close to him and whispered something I couldn't hear. Next thing I knew, the officer said, "Sir, maybe you should step off the property until this gets sorted." I clenched my jaw. "This is sorted," I said, unlocking my phone. "Because I sent every legal document to my base attorney the moment I landed." Her expression changed. "What attorney?" "My commanding officer assigned one," I said quietly. "And he doesn't like fraud." For the first time, Karen didn't speak. She just stared, her lips twitching. I turned to my daughter and said, "Sweetheart, go wait in the truck." She obeyed, tears in her eyes. Then I looked back at the officer and said, "You can stand here with her, or you can wait until the Federal Housing Division shows up. They're already on the way." Karen's confidence faltered. Her voice trembled as she muttered, "You're bluffing." I took a step closer. "You really think I came back from Afghanistan to lose my home to a clipboard and fake signatures?" That's when her phone buzzed. She glanced down and her face went pale. The HOA group chat was exploding. Someone had leaked the documents she forged to sell 3 other veterans, lots in the same neighborhood. Her lies were unraveling in real time, and when she looked up at me again, I just said quietly, "You took what wasn't yours, Karen. Now the army's about to take it back." That evening, the neighborhood felt tense, quiet but not calm. Karen's perfect world was starting to crack, yet she still tried to control the story. She went door to door, telling neighbors I was a dangerous ex-soldier making threats. Some people believed her. Others didn't. But the truth was already in motion and she couldn't stop it. The next morning, I saw 3 black SUVs parked near the HOA office at the end of the street. They weren't local cops. They were federal investigators, sent from the Housing and Urban Development Fraud Division. I didn't have to call them. My military attorney had already handled everything overnight. Karen stood outside the office, pretending to talk on the phone as the agents walked past her. "This is harassment." "I'm the HOA president," she shouted. One of the agents held up a folder. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for property fraud, forgery, and illegal repossession of active-duty military land." The color drained from her face. You can't do this. The community approved it," she screamed. The agent didn't even flinch. "The community doesn't outrank federal law, ma'am." From my porch, I watched the scene unfold. My daughter beside me holding her cup of cocoa. She whispered, "Dad, are they taking her away?" I smiled softly. "Not yet, but soon." Karen's husband came rushing down the street, red-faced and panicked. "You can't just barge in here." "She runs this place," he yelled. One of the agents turned to him and said, "Sir, this entire subdivision was purchased with fraudulent HOA funds tied to your wife's fake land transfers. Every property she resold is now under federal review." That's when the whispers started spreading among the neighbors. One woman gasped, "Wait, does that mean our homes?" The agent nodded. "They belong to the U.S. government until the audit is complete." Karen spun around, her voice cracking. "No, you can't take the subdivision. You can't." I stepped off my porch, walked up to her slowly and said, "Funny, that's exactly what you told me yesterday." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She just stared, trembling, as the agents boxed up her HOA files and sealed the office door with a yellow sticker. "Property seized by federal authority." I leaned closer and whispered, "Next time you try to steal from a soldier, make sure the land you're taking doesn't belong to the military." She looked broken, furious, helpless, and humiliated all at once. But I wasn't done yet, because justice wasn't about watching her fall, it was about exposing the entire system that helped her do it. The next few days were chaos. The HOA group chat was full of panic, families asking if they'd lose their homes, neighbors turning against each other, and Karen nowhere to be seen. Her perfect control had shattered overnight, and while she hid, the truth spread faster than wildfire. Every homeowner learned how she'd been selling off sections of the subdivision to fake buyers, collecting cash and blaming administrative updates. But her biggest mistake wasn't greed. It was thinking no one would dare challenge her. That afternoon, I got a call from my base attorney, Captain Miles. "You're not going to believe this," he said, half laughing. "The subdivision sits on a federal easement, technically. Military-protected land from the 1960s. Karen didn't just commit HOA fraud. She sold government property." I paused, stunned. "So, what happens now?" He chuckled. "Let's just say the Army has every right to reclaim it." By sunset, military trucks rolled in, not with soldiers in combat gear, but legal units and property inspectors. They carried clipboards, not rifles. Still, the sight of Army logos was enough to send a shockwave through the neighborhood. People stepped out of their homes, whispering, filming, trying to make sense of it all. Karen finally appeared on her front lawn, her hair messy, voice trembling. "You can't do this. This is a private community," she screamed, waving her phone like it was a weapon. One of the officers replied calmly, "Ma'am, this land has been under federal designation since 1964. Your community was built illegally over military ground." Her face went blank. That's impossible." I walked up to her, hands in my pockets. "You sold land that never belonged to you. You evicted veterans from federal property. You didn't just mess with me, you messed with the government." She pointed a shaky finger at me. "You set this up. You did this to me?" I smiled faintly. "No, Karen, you did this to yourself. I just reminded the right people who this land really belongs to. And then it happened, the moment no one would ever forget." The lead officer unfolded a document, pinned it to the HOA board, and said loudly for everyone to hear, "Effective immediately, this subdivision is under military repossession, pending fraud investigation." Gasps filled the street. Karen dropped her phone. Her knees buckled. The same woman who once screamed, "You can't live here," now stood on land that wasn't hers to begin with. My daughter tugged on my sleeve. Dad, does this mean it's ours again? I knelt beside her, smiling softly. No, sweetheart. It means justice found its way home. The morning after the federal takeover, the neighborhood was silent. The same driveways that once held. Karen's HOA banners now had yellow tape fluttering in the breeze. Every sign she ever posted, every violation notice, every community standard she shoved in people's faces was gone. Her little empire had fallen overnight. I walked to the porch with my daughter, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over the land she once tried to steal. For the first time in months, it felt like home again. She looked up at me and said, Dad, is Karen going to jail? I took a deep breath. She'll face what she earned. Maybe not today, but soon enough. A black SUV pulled up quietly. 2 federal agents stepped out and knocked on Karen's door. She opened it, eyes red, face pale. You can't take me, she whispered, trembling. One of them showed the warrant. Ma'am, you're under arrest for property fraud, forgery, and obstruction of federal housing law. The neighbors gathered, watching in stunned silence as she was escorted to the vehicle. No one clapped. No one cheered. There was just this quiet sense of finally. She passed me on the sidewalk, and for a brief moment our eyes met. I didn't feel anger anymore, just relief. She muttered, You ruined everything. I replied softly, No, Karen, you did that when you forgot who this country really belongs to, the people who serve it. As her car drove off, my daughter hugged me around the waist. Can we stay here forever now? She asked. I smiled. Forever's a long time, kiddo, but yeah, this land isn't going anywhere again. Weeks passed, and the subdivision slowly transformed. The federal team restored the property lines, and every veteran who had been wronged got their homes back. Legally, permanently, safely. Karen's old office became a community hall run by the very people she once bullied. One afternoon, a reporter came by for an interview. You must feel proud, she said, getting back what was stolen. I looked at the camera and said quietly, I didn't fight for this country to watch someone steal it piece by piece. Land isn't just dirt, it's trust, family, and sacrifice. And sometimes, you have to remind people that freedom still has guardians. The video went viral within hours. People across the country shared it with one line that stuck. She sold his land while he was serving his country, so he made the military take hers. As I stood on my porch that night, the flag swaying gently in the wind, I whispered to myself, home, finally home. The end.